As you walk off a set like this, I mean, this movie really kind of helps you discover a lot about the character, a lot about himself and what he can actually succeed and build and try and learn how to survive. What did you take away from the film about yourself that you didn't know before?
Well, I learned a lot about directing, just being next to Ridley and watching him and henpecking him with questions, which he was very generous about answering. And also watching him shoot 4 cameras at a time, which is really quite something. I mean, anybody can turn on 4 cameras, but to actually find 4 Ridley Scott frames simultaneously is really incredible. And I was skeptical. I had heard that he did that, and I was like, there's not really a way to do that. And then was just floored when he did it. Every single shot there's 3 other cameras working.
So sick.
It's sick, dude.
Dude,
It just
so
doesn't.
sick.
And I went in one day.
I'm geeking out, man.
There's this. You'll like this then. So I go in one day and he's in his tent and he's got his 4 monitors up, and he's looking at the shots. You know, he's got a walkie-talkie and he's talking to everybody. You know, push in, pull out. You know, like explaining exactly how he wants the frames. And I walk in and I look at these frames and I go, Ridley, those 4 frames are perfect. Every one of those frames are perfect. And he looks up and he goes, they've been perfect for a long time.
he's been timing it out and everything.
It's just like, you know, I've been perfect for 40 years, man. I'm Ridley Scott, motherfucker.
That's exactly what I would say all my life. Now, I was a huge Interstellar fan. I think it was one of the best movies I've seen. I love Chris Nolan so much. Could you imagine a scenario where Dr. Mann and Mark Watney kind of met and talked about science? Like, what would they talk about? Because they both kind of were on a planet by themselves for a long time.
Right. They have very different outlooks, though.
Yeah.
No, they'd probably hit it off. Yeah. Mann probably would have been grateful for the company. That's for sure. He might have lasted a little longer.
Let's get that
on his
done.
ice planet. Yeah.
If they need to do is do a Martian 2, drop Affleck in from Jay and Silent Bob and go, I don't know, what are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do, Will?
You know, this movie you're dealing with a lot because you're shooting on Budapest, and I know they try to double that for Mars. As you walk around, and you kind of have to walk differently because you're on a different planet. Is that all done through the acting, or is there wind machines kind of holding you to a certain? Like, how do they pull that off?
He plays with the he overcranks a little bit, and goes to, I think probably, I was looking at it last night, 28 to 30 frames, a second, just for a couple of the moments where I'm outside, because it's the kind of thing that you want to try to sell it once, and then you want to. I mean, Mars is 40% of the Earth's gravity.
Right.
So if you open up that can of worms, you know, that's just going to be a whole palaver. So you gotta just kind of indicate it and kind of give people the feeling, okay, the gravity's different here, and then move on.
When you make a movie like this, when you're pretty much on your own the entire film, do you keep yourself isolated from everybody else when you're making it to feel that loneliness? Do you step away from your family a little bit too? Not fully during production,
Right.
but do you kind of isolate yourself a little bit to feel that?
No, I haven't been isolated in a very long time. Yeah. There are some mornings I really would like to be isolated, you know, have a coffee and read the paper. But no, four kids doesn't allow for much isolation.
Yeah. You know, I want to ask you about the line you have about kind of reaching the end and this choice you have whether you're going to accept that this is the end or you're going to get up and do something about it. And I want to ask you, like, kind of in your career and the acting that you've done so far, have you ever reached that point as an actor in a movie or any realm, like where you feel like this is the end, this is not working, and you somehow turned around and actually survived it?
No, I mean, I think kind of embarking on a career in acting is like that. You know, it's like you have to have that come to Jesus moment with yourself at the beginning and say, all right, I'm doing this, because you'll get eaten alive if you don't. And so you have to have that kind of mission intensity, like to just coming out of the gate, because I mean, it's just so competitive, and the business is not set up for you to succeed. So you have to really go after it.
And without giving any specifics away about where this scene happens, you have an incredible spinning shot around Matt Damon as he's flying in some aspect. How do you achieve that shot? It's an amazing shot.
We built rails around the roof of the capsule, the nose cone, and it was physically just pushed around. And because those visors get reflect everything in there. So you had to take the visor out, and then you had to put the visors back in digitally. So the visors are perfect. Because then on top of that, I knew all the screws that fell to the floor When he gets up with absolutely zero gravity, those screws will start to rotate around him. So that's where the screws appear and start bouncing off his helmet and everything.
Wow. Now, you've been a huge director with practical effects. You love, I mean, obviously you go back to Alien, you go Blade Runner, even Exodus, you built things, you have practical sets. Here you have a very practical environment as well, but you're also using digital effects, obviously, to create some of the things.
Sure.
I'm thinking to myself, like, if this film came to you some way in 1979 when you had Alien, could you pull this off fully practical, and what would be a scene that would be the hardest to do, you think?
Well, you couldn't do what I've just described. You couldn't have all those screws flying around. You couldn't, and you know, God's in the details, as always. Like when I'm on Mars, I added a lot of those dust twisters. They're all digital. The skies were all put in on Mars. The dust formations which are moving in the skies are digital.
If you had to do this practically, how could you couldn't do them?
You wouldn't do it, no. And so, you know, Alien and Blade Runner are fundamental matte paintings, and there's one. I shouldn't point out the flaws, but in Alien there's a painting when John Hurt lowers himself into the hold and says, "What the hell is this?" That was a painting. It was. I always go, but it's all right. It's fine. It worked. The film worked.
Yeah, oh, of course it works. It's one of the scariest movies ever made. You know, there's a great line that Matt Damon talks about how, you know, this is how I end. And he goes, now you either just accept it or you get to work.
Sure.
I thought that was it's a great thing because that can apply to anybody in any realm.
Well, it's a message for life.
Right, and
really.
What I wanted to know was, as a filmmaker, have you ever reached that point in a movie and you thought this is going badly, it's not going to go right, but then you just accepted it and you also kind of worked it out? Have you ever reached that point before?
Yeah, it used to happen every day. My film school really was television commercials, but my commercials were, I never did baby food and stuff like that. My commercials were in the days when I think there was a real renaissance in advertising in England and Europe. And every advert was like a little film, so it was a great period, and that was my film school, and it became very competitive with other directors, and so sometimes I would go there in the morning. I'd be doing those days 3 a week. I'd do 150 commercials a year. Now they do 12 a year. I think they're busy. It's bizarre, but I'd always get that start. You've got to get off the ground fast in the morning, otherwise you're never going to make it. And by the time, if you hadn't going by 12, you're in serious trouble. That would happen often. Because I always agonize over this, you know, the shot, the visual. Gradually, that became quicker and quicker. Now I'm like lightning loops.
Wow. Wrap me real quick. How did you pull Matt Damon back after that water explosion? Because I think, if I remember, it's one shot.
It's
like,
a cable, yeah. He goes, woo, and we pull him up. We
you
yank
literally,
him.
you literally pull him.
Yeah, sure. You put a cable on him, pull him. You remove the cable afterwards. He couldn't throw himself backwards like that. But then you put in, there's a slight bang, and then we put in a bigger bang, and you yank him. It's funny as hell, that.
I would love to see the outtake of it.
I know, I still break up when I see that. We only did it once.
Mr. Ridley Scott, it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thanks for nerding out with me. I mean, you seriously, the sequence when you're filming the storm, how do they actually shoot that moment? Is there any debris really flying around? How do you look like you're actually going up against a force of a wind? How do they shoot that?
They had about 10 wind turbines, and they were chucking a lot of stuff into the air. So it was pretty tough. The visibility was really low. We were kind of the only ones on set. You know, everyone else was back behind in tents and things, and it was so loud. We had earwigs so we could hear, you know, little speakers in our ear and a microphone, but we really had to scream everything because we tried it the first time and we had to stop because we just started saying our lines at the same time. We're like looking at each other, thinking like, "When do I talk?" Because you couldn't hear anything. I mean, it really, it wasn't green screen. It was all practical.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Now, you're an astronaut, and you've been to space, and you've seen a lot of movies that, you know, Ridley Scott's done, Alien, this film, Interstellar. What is it about movies? What movies do you think have gotten the most accurate portrayals of what it's like to be in space besides this film? Have you seen other films that have kind of like really accurately portrayed it?
You know, since I've become an astronaut, I would have to give some credit to Gravity for the views that they have of the Earth. You know, when I did my spacewalks, when I saw that movie, I was like, wow, that really took me back. It looked so realistic to the view I remember having through my visor. And the other thing they did was to simulate the motion of objects in a weightless environment was very accurate and also kind of spooky. How did they do that? You know, so I have to give credit to that movie.
And one thing Ridley Scott's very famous for is his strong female characters, which I'm a big fan of. Alien's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah.
And this book, your character had a little bit of a smaller presence than she does in the film. And I'm wondering, like, when you take on a role like this, knowing that they've built it out, they've made it a bigger presence for you, can you talk about the importance of that for you and how that makes you feel as an actress and kind of bringing a strong female character to screen?
It's wonderful to be involved in a film that hopefully will inspire young girls to be astronauts. And you know, when I did Interstellar, I thought, wouldn't it be great if girls want to be, astrophysicists? How cool would that be? And now, and now thinking like girls and boys, that they'll look at this movie and go, yeah, I want to be commander of a space mission. I want to go to Mars. I want to do all of that. That to me is really important.
Yeah, well, you guys did wonderful work. Thank you so much for this movie.
Thank
it's awesome
you,
to geek
honey.
out with you as always. You're always wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
It's an
Kevin.
honor to meet you, by the way.
I know,
You
she's
are
pretty
awesome.
great.
Yeah. And this is something I've always wanted to ask you because I'm a big fan of your movies. I've been watching your movies for a long time. I read somewhere that you roughly die in about 30% of your films. There's like a funny montage video of like all your deaths in movies.
Probably more than that.
You must have a
70%.
death scene.
So what I wanted to ask you was, there's a death reel on YouTube of all your,
Yes.
Oh
your
my
Game of
God.
Thrones death.
Yeah.
Your
I'm going.
death,
I'm looking it
Patriot
up.
Games. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that. When you look at scripts nowadays, like something like this, do you want characters that live? Do you
Choose
choose?
the back page.
Oh, there I am.
I start from the back now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make a living out of surviving these days,
Right.
and it's quite. But I've had some quite memorable deaths and some good deaths.
Some
But I
great
want to kind of
deaths.
stay alive and doing this. So that's
One thing I love about filmmaking in movies is that you get 2 hours for an arc, but in TV shows, you get multiple seasons, multiple ways to actually extend a character and think about the character. Do you prefer working in an environment where you have multiple seasons and multiple episodes to flesh out somebody, or do you prefer a 2-hour arc where you know where you begin and end?
I didn't mind. Newsroom we had a 10-episode season. That's a 10-hour movie. You're shooting the novel, not a short story. That's what it felt like, and I like that. Game of
nice
Thrones.
to
Did you
have
like that?
Yes, to have the luxury of not just passing, just keep a subject or something. You can have time to explore it and really justify the scene, and then and you don't have to tell the story in 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it's quite nice to be able to have that arc, isn't it? And to develop a character and not to be rushed into condensing it. And one of the good things about doing television, one of the many good things.
Television's gotten really good.
We're
And
gonna
it's
go
because of the
TV.
writing and the opportunities to. I mean, what indie films were, 20 years ago, and I know they're still there, but a lot of that is for roles are going to television, and actors will chase good writing and good roles. Now it doesn't matter where it is. In the 70s, you didn't even look at
Taboo, wasn't
television,
it?
but
Yeah.
now, good role's a good role. Off you go.
There's a great line in the film that Matt Damon talks about this idea of reaching the end, and with the idea of accepting whether or not you're at the end, or getting off your butt and actually doing something about it. So I want to ask you, as actors, do you ever find that level? Like, do you ever reach a level when you're making a movie that you feel like this is not going well at all? How do I get past it and make it the best I can?
It's not how do I get past it. How do I get off this movie? It's all. No, I usually know going in. Whether if the script is there, then it's a matter of execution, and that can be kind of guesswork,
Yeah.
But usually you kind of know.
You kind of know. It's a group effort always. Like, one thing I think this really taught me is, like, trust in everybody, and you don't really have that problem. But, like, you kind of know early on. And, I mean, I'm not the type to, like, to try and back out. I mean, unless I think it's going to be detrimental on, like, all fronts,
Right.
But, like, like, if something's not working, one thing that with NASA is, like, if something's not working, like, we all have to have strong enough egos to be like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Like, this is not good for anything. So it's like, I think I would only take projects where I feel like everybody's strong enough to do that.